Hey friends, welcome or welcome back. My name is Shannon, and today we are going to talk about some women in translation. It's now August, and that is when the BookTube community likes to celebrate female women authors who don't write in English. I have approximately 15 books here written by women in various languages all over the globe. And so let's just get started so that this video is not 3 hours long. We're going to start off in the Americas with Haiti, and that would be Love, Anger, Madness, a Haitian Triptych by Marie Vieu-Chauvet. I apologize if I'm butchering that French. And this is translated from the French by Rose Miriam Rejoie and Val Vinocourt. And I think this is great. They actually put the translators on the cover. It drives me insane when publishers do not do that. So this book here was published in Haiti in 1968, and it is a three-part novel that explores the psychological and social impacts of political oppression in Haiti during the Duvalier dictatorship. And each novella in the triptych, we have Love, Anger, and Madness, presents a very distinct narrative connected by themes of fear, violence, class division, and resistance. Love is the story of three sisters who fall in love with the same man. One marries him, one seduces him, and one befriends him. An explosive family dynamic that echoes the growing political chaos outside the house. In Anger, a father insinuates to his daughter that she can save their family's land by prostituting herself. The guilt that ensues upon the sale of her body and soul reveals the profound fissures in the family. Finally, Madness is the terrifying portrait of a Haitian village ravaged by militants. Trapped and afraid, the villagers find their desires and fears arising to the surface. I should also mention that all of the books I'm talking about today I have not read, but they are definitely high up on my list of books to get to. Sticking with the Americas, we are now moving on to Mexico with Reservoir Bitches by Dahlia de la Cerda, and this is translated from the Spanish by Heather Cleary and Julia Sanchez. Again, great job putting the translator on the cover. This was published in 2024 and was longlisted for the 2025 Booker Prize. And this is 13 interconnected short stories narrated by young Mexican women navigating systemic violence, class oppression, and personal trauma. Life's a bitch. That's why you gotta rattle her cage, even if she's foaming at the mouth. In the 13 linked stories of Reservoir Bitches, Mexican women prod the bitch that is life and become her. From the all-powerful daughter of a cartel boss to a victim of transfemicide, from a household of spinster seamstresses to a socialite who supports her political husband by faking indigenous roots, these women spit on their own reduction and invent new ways to endure, telling their own stories in bold, unapologetic voices. So to me, that sounds absolutely fantastic, and I can't wait to get to this. Okay, so now we are going to move along to South America in Argentina with Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bazterrica, and this is translated from the Spanish by Sarah Moses. This was published in 2017, and it is a dystopian novel set in a near future society where a virus makes animal meat unsafe for human consumption. And so in order to fill the void and feed the people, the government legalizes and industrializes human farming, turning people into livestock referred to as head or special meat. We are following Marco, who is a vegan, who takes a job at a slaughterhouse in order to support his father with dementia. Marco is estranged from his wife after their infant child dies, and one day Marco is given a breeding female, and instead of slaughtering her, which is his job, he keeps her and starts to treat her like a human, which is forbidden. And so Marco becomes conflicted by this new society, and the story serves as an allegory for our contemporary issues of consumption, commodification, and trauma and systemic cruelty. And it will supposedly force our reflection on how easily societal norms can be bent or broken under the guise of survival. or convenience. I have heard that this book can sometimes turn the stomach, and it is not for the faint of heart. So I will definitely have to be in the right mind to read this. When that will be, I don't know. Heading on to Brazil, The Simple Art of Killing a Woman by Patricia Melo, and this is translated from the Portuguese by Sophie Lewis, and this was published in 2019. And this novel combines journalism, myth, and personal trauma to expose a real epidemic of violence against women in Brazil. We have an unnamed protagonist, a young Sao Paulo-based lawyer who is fleeing an abusive relationship, and she relocates to a remote Amazon town in Brazil to research and document court hearings on femicide cases. There she meets Carla, who is a local prosecutor, and Marcos, who is the son of an indigenous woman, who they both introduce the unnamed narrator to cases of just relentless violence, racism, and systemic legal corruption. Most notably, the rape and murder of a 14-year-old indigenous teenager by wealthy local men. So the novel structure is a little bit different, and there's three kind of narrative modes in the book. So there's letter titled chapters, and that is the main thread following this lawyer's investigation and her emotional journey. Then the chapters with Greek letters apparently are her ayahuasca-induced visions, where she encounters mythical warrior women and she pieces together her own suppressed memories, including the death of her mother. And then the numbered chapters are records of real femicide cases, listing victims' names, their killers, and the circumstances. And it's just that the book is supposed to be a reminder of how ordinary and prevalent the violence is. And so we're doing a lot of exploration on systemic injustice, trauma, memory, vengeance, resistance. So this is, again, probably another book not for the faint of heart. So I will definitely have to be in the right mind to read this one as well. All right, so now we're leaving the Americas and we're going to hop over to Europe, and we're going to start in Spain with Nada by Carmen Laforet. And this was translated from the Spanish by Edith Grossman, and this was published in 1945 and set in post-Civil War Spain. We are following Andrea, who is an orphaned young woman who moves to Barcelona to attend university and also live with her extended family. I think maybe grandmother and uncles or something. So there she encounters which was once a wealthy household, now plagued by poverty, tension, and emotional instability. The oppressive atmosphere is supposed to mirror the bleakness of Spanish society under General Franco's regime at that time. And so Andrea does find moments of friendship, freedom, self-discovery, particularly through her friendship with the wealthy Ina, who is involved with Andrea's uncle, Roman. And so this story is supposed to be a portrait of, the struggle for identity and independence in a repressive, decaying world. Okay, so let's pop over to France with Gigi by Colette. And this was translated from the French by Roger Senhouse. And this edition I have here includes another story called The Cat, but we're not talking about the cat, we're just talking about Gigi today. And I don't know if any of you have ever seen the 1950s musical with Leslie Caron, and I loved that musical when I was a kid, and that's probably one of the reasons why I picked up this book, because I probably didn't realize it was a real story, but I love that musical. Anyway, the story was published in 1944 and is set in the late 1800s Paris, and we're following Gigi, who is a teenage girl being trained by her grandmother and great aunt to become a courtesan, which apparently was a tradition in their family. However, Gigi defies expectations with her honesty, her innocence, and her independence. And so when Gaston Lachey, a rich, bored older man and a longtime family friend, proposes to make Gigi his mistress, Gigi rejects and surprises everyone with this rejection. And so her dignity and charm ultimately lead Gaston to fall genuinely in love with her and propose marriage instead. And so this is supposed to be a witty and subversive coming-of-age story that critiques social conventions about love, class, and female roles, which is exactly what the author Colette was doing herself. She at the time was going against all the social conventions. She had lovers with men and women and various marriages, and she loved to wear men's clothes, and she was definitely a fascinating character. And this is a teeny little thing. So should be very easy to get through. So next we're going to pop up to Norway with the Kristin Lavransdatter series by Sigrid Undset, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And this trilogy, there's 3 books here, was translated from the Norwegian by Tina Nunnally. And this trilogy, there we go, was published between 1920 and 1922, and Undset did win the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1928. So this is a sweeping historical story set in 14th century Norway, following the life of Kristin, the daughter of a respected landowner. So the trilogy is The Wreath, The Wife, and The Cross. And so the story basically charts Kristin's journey from devout, headstrong girl to passionate woman who defies her parents to marry a charming but irresponsible nobleman. And so we go through her troubled marriage, her role as a mother, the burdens of guilt, faith, love, and how they define her life in medieval Norwegian society. And so this is just an epic story about love, sin, duty, redemption, and we're exploring, faith, family, and the cost of personal choices. And the edition I have here is the Penguin Black Spine that's separated into 3 books, which I think is great because I originally was going to purchase the combined version and it was massive. It was absolutely massive. Like I was never going to get through it, but breaking it up into the 3 separate stories will make it more digestible. Okay, next we are going to Germany with The Piano Teacher by Elfriede Jelinek. And I hope, again, I'm pronouncing that correctly. I looked it up and I wasn't getting much help. And this was translated from the German by Joachim Neugroschel. And you see here, I have a little sticky note on here because it's a little bit of an inappropriate cover situation we have. So covering up our naughty bits. So this was published in 1983. And Jelinek won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2004. And here we are following Erica, who is a sexually and emotionally repressed piano teacher, as she enters into essentially a sadomasochistic relationship with one of her young students. Erica is already a failed concert pianist. She's in her late 30s. She's still living with her very domineering mother. She visits peep shows at night and watches sadomasochistic films. And so this book is supposed to explore complex dynamics of power, sexuality, and identity. And it's supposed to be a very dark and twisted, grotesque story. So I cannot imagine there's going to be a happy ending here. And I was actually supposed to read this earlier this year because I went on a trip to Europe and I visited various countries, Austria including. And so I wanted to read this before I went. I didn't get to it. And the more I'm learning about it, I'm a little nervous about it because I'm reading reviews on it and people are very, very divided. People are saying, yes, it's brilliant. It's, it covers this complex topics of dynamics and sex and repression and everything. And then other people are like, it's straight up porn. So I'm kind of now not sure what to do with this, but I am really intrigued by it. So we'll see. Next, we're moving to Poland with Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead by Olga Tokarczuk, and this was translated from the Polish by Antonia Lloyd-Jones. This was another book I was supposed to read earlier this year for my European trip. I did go to Poland in addition to Austria, but I never got to read this book. This was published in 2008, and it was shortlisted for the International Booker Prize in 2019. Tokarczuk had already won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2018. And this is a literary mystery set in a remote Polish village. And we are following Janine, who is an eccentric, reclusive old lady who loves astrology, animals, and the poetry of William Blake. So when local hunters start turning up dead under mysterious circumstances, Janina believes that the animals might be taking revenge. And so she starts to insert herself into the investigation. Her theories are dismissed as madness, but then the novel gradually reveals deeper truths about violence, justice, and humanity's relationship with nature. And this is supposed to be a dark, comic, philosophical thriller that also critiques patriarchy, cruelty towards animals, and society's dismissal of outsiders. And I think I'm really going to like this. I mean, what's not to love with a cranky old lady who loves animals inserting herself into investigations? I mean, goals. All right, so let's head on to Italy with The Days of Abandonment by Elena Ferrante. And this is translated from the Italian by Anne Goldstein. And this was published in 2002. And it is a psychological novel about Olga, a woman whose husband suddenly leaves her after 15 years of marriage. And she's faced with abandonment. And so she spirals into emotional chaos, the rage, despair, loneliness, self-destruction. And as she grapples with the collapse of her life and identity, she has to confront, truths about love, dependency, and survival. And I've been told that this is, an unflinching portrayal of heartbreak and the struggle to reclaim oneself. And never having been married or had children, I may not be able to identify with that type of abandonment, but I can identify with being a middle-aged woman and just having something happen to make you rethink your entire life and just the emotional chaos that puts you in. So, and then you throw in children with that, I can't even imagine. So I do believe that I am going to connect with this book once I get to it. And it is thin, so maybe for Shorty September. All right, so let's pop over to Greece with Three Summers by Margarita Liberaki. And this is translated from the Greek by Karen Van Dyke. And this was published in 1946 and set in Greece just before World War II. And so we're following three teenage sisters, Maria, Infanta, and Katerina, as they come of age in the Greek countryside. Living in a big old house surrounded by a beautiful garden are Maria, the oldest sister, as sexually bold as she is eager to settle down and have a family of her own, beautiful but distant Infanta, and dreamy and rebellious Katerina, through whose eyes the story is mostly observed. Over 3 summers, the girls share and keep secrets, fall in and out of love, try to figure out their parents and other members of the tribe of adults, take note of the weird ways of friends and neighbors, and worry about and wonder who they are. So that sounds like it would be a great summer read. And now we are going to head to the Middle East, into Turkey, with Summer Heat by Defne Suman. And this is translated from the Turkish by Betsy Göksel. And I just recently talked about this. It's on my summer TBR, and I do plan on reading it. It's still summer. I have time. I haven't gotten to it yet, but I will. This is an historical novel that intertwines personal and political narratives across some very important times in Turkish history. So we have 2 timelines here. We have 1974 with a young Melike who's witnessing political unrest in Istanbul. She hears her parents talking about prison, invasion, military coups. So the family, trying to seek refuge, they move to a remote village in the south. However, that peace is shattered when Malike's father suddenly and mysteriously disappears. And then we intertwine with the year 2003. Malike is now an accomplished art historian. She receives a mysterious email from some guy named Petro. He's requesting a tour of some of Istanbul's churches, and she agrees. So, and then their meeting will lead to a series of revelations about Petro's true identity, which in turn makes Malike unearth long buried family secrets and challenges, the ideas of her childhood. And so this book is supposed to delve into themes of identity, trauma and the lingering effect of historical events on personal lives. Okay, next we are going to Oman with Bitter Orange Tree by Joka El-Harti. And this was translated from the Arabic by Marilyn Booth. And I was very excited when I saw this in the store because I very rarely see any books by either men or women translated from Arabic. So I was very excited to pick this up. And from what I gather, El-Harti is the first Omani woman ever to have a novel translated in English. This is not that novel. Celestial Bodies is the first of her novels to be translated into English, and it did end up winning the International Booker Prize in 2019. So Bitter Orange Tree was published in 2016 and is set in contemporary Oman, where we are following Zuhar, an Omani student who living in Britain, trying to live a life there, but she still can't help ruminate on her homeland, her past relationships, specifically with her grandmother, who had died shortly after she left for Britain. Bitter Orange Tree is a profound exploration of social status, wealth, desire, and female agency. It presents a mosaic portrait of one young woman's attempt to understand the roots she has grown from and to envisage an adulthood in which her own power and happiness might find the freedom necessary to bear fruit and flourish. All right, so now we're going a little bit further east to China with Love in a Fallen City by Eileen Chang. And this is translated from the Chinese by Karen S. Kingsbury. And this edition here is a collection of stories and novellas written in the 1940s when Chang was in her 20s. And we have tales of love, longing, and shifting family dynamics. And stories include Jasmine Tea, Love in a Fallen City, Red Rose, White Rose. I'm going to read a blurb by Ang Lee on the back, which I think will really encapture this collection. With language as sharp as a knife edge, Eileen Chang cut open a huge divide in Chinese culture between the classical patriarchy and our troubled modernity. She was one of the very few who could see on both sides of that divide into which her heroines so often disappeared. Eileen Chang is the fallen angel of Chinese literature, and now, with these excellent new translations, English readers can discover why she is so revered by Chinese readers everywhere. Now, I mean, if a blurb isn't going to make you buy a book, I mean, that one definitely does. So I am excited to check this out. And finally, we are heading to Japan with The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Ogawa. And this is translated from the Japanese by Stephen Snyder. This was published in 2003 and is set in contemporary Japan. We are following the unique friendship between a brilliant but memory-impaired math professor with his housekeeper. So the professor's memory lasts only 80 minutes due to a brain injury, but his love for mathematics remains vivid. And through their daily interactions, the housekeeper and her young son develop a deep bond with the professor, discovering the beauty of numbers and human connection. And this is supposed to be a heartwarming story of memory, friendship, and the quiet wonders of life. And these days, I'm really gravitating a lot to heartwarming stories. Just things are very stressful these days. And so I just want something that is not going to cause me additional stress. That is a lot of books written by women, not in English. So I noticed as I was going through all of my books that I don't have any Southeast Asian translations by any gender, which I find interesting. So if you have any, please send them my way. I would love to read more about that area of the world. I do have a lot of books written by women from Africa, but they were actually written in English. They're not in translations, which I found interesting. So Southeast Asian translations by either men or women, and African translations by men or women. Put them in the comments. I'd love to hear about them. So that is it. Have you read any of these? Please let me know. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining, and have a great day. Bye.